Buying or selling a home is one of the most important decisions you'll make in your entire life. Call the Holly Ritchie team today for a free market analysis.
Hi everyone, I'm Anthony Spano and welcome to Spanning the Needs, Stories of Your Lifestyle. Tonight, we have a great person, an educator, Marissa Platton from Austintown School District. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you're actually, I know we talked about off camera about school and how busy and a lot of different things are going on. You're probably we're at the middle of September right now, and what are you guys, 2, 3, 4 weeks into the school year?
Yeah, we're getting there, and still trying to get the cobwebs out from summertime, and it takes time, and we're just trying to get in the groove of things and make sure our kids are ready to go for the rest of the school year, and it flies by. It flies by. So
yeah, and like you were saying, you've been there 6 years.
Yeah,
and it's like that. It's
yes.
Just flown by.
Absolutely.
And what's that look like? Just one day, your first year, and you're like, I'm trying to understand what the atmosphere is, and then you're 6. You're like, walk in. I'm a pro at this now.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a pro by any means, but it's definitely, I'm a lot less confused every day. It's now to the point where I've got other educators coming to me to ask, like, hey, what do I do with this? And I'm like, well, I did this in the past, let's try that. Or, I don't really know, let's work on it together.
You haven't gotten in trouble.
I haven't gotten in trouble.
Way.
Yeah, so, it's really cool though, because as I progress further and further into my career, I really have a different experience every year, and really when it comes to the experiences I've had, it's almost kind of separated pre-COVID and now COVID/post-COVID, if we can call it that, and so
every different term possible.
Every year has just been so different because of the dynamics that we've had in education and around the world with COVID and stuff.
Talk a little bit about kind of how you became a teacher, because I always like to know, like was there something in your past, or was there something that just kind of clicked in your head, like, I want to be a teacher, like when you were like 6 years old? So talk a little bit about how that became for you as an educator.
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to be a teacher when I was younger. I would go through brief periods of thinking if I was going to do something else, but I was, 10 years old. You don't know what real life is like as an adult, But so when I entered high school, I was pretty sure teaching was for me, but I didn't know what age level. And so I started actually helping out as an aide at my church's Sunday school in a first grade room. First graders are amazing, but not for me. I learned that very quick. So
what is that, like 7-ish?
Yeah.
And I have a 1-year-old, so I have some time to wait.
Yeah, and I have a 2-year-old, so I still, I've got some time before she gets there.
Oh,
but so when I got to high school then, and I realized I was doing that the younger kids weren't really what I was looking for. I really found a passion for mathematics, and it wasn't until I had actually a teacher of mine, Carlo Trafficani. I had him for a few years of math in high school, and he just had this passion for mathematics and this passion for teaching kids, and he inspired me. So really it's all because Mr. Trafficani, who now works in the same district as I do, really inspired me to take mathematics head on and to become that high school math teacher. So that's what landed me where I am today.
You went to Youngstown State.
I did. Yep, go Gwins.
Go Gwins, yeah.
Go Gwins.
Youngstown State grad.
Yeah.
We look at teaching as more than just a profession.
Absolutely.
I think what people don't maybe not understand is what you guys go through day to day. Students' mental health, education, broadband. I mean, the list goes on and on. I feel that you have a personal story about that. You almost left the profession.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of tell your story? Because I think this is good on what educators go through that people may not know.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, I always wanted to be a teacher. I was really passionate about it, especially after high school. I knew I wanted to go to YSU. And so my sophomore year there, I had a friend of mine, James, who was like, hey, come join the student organization for educators. And I used to call myself like a student org junkie. I was all about it. I was, homecoming committee and student government association, so I loved it. So I did. And I found out it was actually a student chapter of our teachers union. And so we're called the Youngstown Student Education Association. And so we provided professional development and networking and all these phenomenal resources for pre-service teachers that I wasn't finding anywhere else outside of the association. And so I felt really prepared when I graduated college going into being an active teacher
because
in
you
our
also
profession.
have to do student teaching at a specific school within
Exactly.
the local area, correct?
Yes, yeah, and I actually did my student teaching in Niles.
Okay.
So, and I had a great experience there, and so I felt so prepared going in to be a teacher, and so, like I said, I'm a graduate of Austintown Fitch, and I wanted to go back and teach there and give back to the community that gave so much back to me, and so I had a great first year. Mm-hmm. My first year was amazing. Our administrators were supportive. We had, I was teaching freshman algebra 1. My kids were great.
Algebra, we talked about that.
We did.
As you can age me on this, 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, algebra was being taken at the 10th grade level. And now they're taking it in like the 3rd grade level. Yeah,
well, so algebra itself is really a part of mathematics because it's really about critical thinking and problem solving. So the class itself you take as a freshman still, but there's a lot of new strategies and things that help learners that are maybe more visual that we weren't known before,
right.
So people talk about new math. Math isn't new. There's still numbers,
someone just needed to make it fresh. New math,
and people blame it on the standards and Common Core and all those things, but really it's just new strategies, different strategies that I even teach now that I didn't use in high school mathematics that are just so much better for kids, and for all types of learners, because not every kid is the same.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, mathematics was taught the same way for years upon years upon years, and then it has this stigma that I hate math and math is hard and it's okay to be bad at math, and that's not the case. Nobody goes up to you and says it's okay to be bad at English, but they say it's okay to be bad at math, and so those strategies have gone. So it was great to be able to use these strategies my first year and really get these kids on the path that they needed to be on to be successful moving forward and graduate high school. So like I said, I was having an awesome time. I was enjoying it. I was excited. I didn't have the typical difficult first year until about 3/4 of the way through the year. And in the state of Ohio, we go through the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System. And there's a newer version of the system now. But at the time, half of your evaluation was performance reviews by your principal, by your administrator. I was doing okay at those. My administrator gave me some awesome critique. We worked on it. I was progressing throughout the year. The other half had to do with one test on one day.
The Ohio Basic Skills Test.
So this was actually not a state test.
Okay.
My kids did great on the state test.
Okay.
They passed that.
Okay.
It was the post-assessment. So you give them a test at the beginning of the year, you give them a test at the end of the year, and you see how they do. I failed. My students failed. I couldn't get 50% of my students to hit their growth targets that year. Now, I told you, I was really passionate. I felt ready. I was confident in my first year. So when I got my state evaluation back, it said, Marissa Platton, ineffective.
That's got to be hard.
I was ineffective. And I was like, wow, I am doing a disservice to these students by being a teacher. I might as well just quit. I was going to quit my job at the end of the year. Over 50% of educators quit the profession completely in the first 5 years of teaching, and I was going to be one of them. So it was a rough year. Last quarter of the year was really rough for me. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't be talking to you today if it wasn't for being a part of my teachers union. The Austintown Education Association, the Ohio Education Association. There's a department of OEA called Ohio's New Educators that supported me. I had the physical supports. I had the professional development. I had the learning instruction strategies that I needed. I didn't have the emotional support that I needed, and my teachers union pulled me out of that hole that I was crawling myself into. And they encouraged me to keep going and to get better and to realize that it was one test on one day that I had no part in creating because I was a first-year teacher. So I am very grateful for my teachers union and for my colleagues in Ohio's New Educators and at OEA and in the AEA.
And they're all educators.
Because I'm here.
They're all
and
educators. And
Right.
Your Austintown Fitch administrators, your teachers that were able to support you because you were able to fall back on them and just kind of say, hey,
100%.
I need help.
Exactly. And for me, I was perfectionist,
No,
I graduated valedictorian from high school, I was, magna cum laude at YSU. And so for me to be ineffective, I felt like a failure. And so that was really hard. It was really hard to be like, hey, I need some help.
It's hard to ask for help.
And it's nobody's fault about that test except for the fact that the evaluation system was broken.
Mm-hmm.
And OEA has done a great deal in advocating for us as educators so that we can be the best educators we can be for our students. And OEA had a great part in changing that system to now be OTES 2.0, which is a much better version than what I went through my first year. So the hope is that first year educators, newer educators, early career educators don't go through what I go through, because nobody should feel unsupported. Nobody should feel like they're less than what they are, especially as an educator. We try to teach our kids that every day,
It's funny you say that, because not even, I would say now, you've been in 6 years. 3 of them have pretty much been a pandemic.
Yeah.
And a big number, you talk about how teachers leave first 5 years. Okay. Here's a number for you. This comes from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. I can't even say it. 2.6 million public education, K-12 and higher education, have left since the pandemic. This was February 2020 to May of 2022. 1.3 million have been laid off, and about 700 some thousand have retired.
Yeah.
Did the pandemic really put that much pressure on educators?
100%.
And how did it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the spring of 2020, we get a call. We're going to be gone 3 weeks. And then we're like, okay, figure it out, right? Because, no fault of any administrator or any school district, because they were going through the same things we were. They weren't prepared for a pandemic. Then we were, no, we're going to come back in May. And then it was, no, we're not coming back until next year. And so just that spring at all, we're thrown into this digital world that not only, I'm a millennial, I'm all about technology, but I learned things that I had no idea about that were even available. Even tech companies, they were thrown for a loop. Google was thrown for a loop. They had to update their systems over and over and over just to deal with the capacity. There were so many times our kids couldn't access the technology because the tech companies themselves were out of capacity. They weren't ready for it either. And so we're thrown in this, how do we teach online? How do we hold kids accountable when they're not face-to-face with us every day? And you get through that, and you're like, oh, good, we're done. We're going back to school.
Going back in the fall of 2020.
Going back in the fall. We're ready to go. And then but we're not ready to go, because now we've got some students that are comfortable and families coming back and some that aren't. We've got medical issues to worry about. We're worried about ourselves. We're about masking. How do you keep kids to wear their masks all day in these buildings? It was, the next year was hard. It was, because I know for me personally, I was teaching students online and in person at the same time. And that was by choice. I gave my online students the option to Zoom into my class during their class period, so it felt more like live instruction. But that was a requirement in some school districts. Yeah. And how difficult is that? It's not just online. It's not just in person. Now it's both. When you've got veteran teachers who have never used a piece of technology in their life, and you've got first-year teachers who have never even taught before, so the whole career continuum was affected by that.
Over the last 3 years, now we're already in year 2.5, whatever you would like to call it.
Yeah.
What has changed? Has anything changed the way you approach schooling now as an educator? Because we've talked about that mental health of students not getting that one-on-one or group, not being able to comprehend or move to the next grade because they didn't maybe have the resources to like you said, systems were always down. You're trying to teach. What is that kind of? What have we learned from the pandemic, from the first year going back, and now I think, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, now you're going to have schools going into full mode like it was prior to the pandemic. Is that a good enough assumption?
Yeah, I would think that's a pretty good assumption, is that most school districts are what we would call pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, things before the world shut down, which is good, which is nice. I can even tell in the past few weeks with my students, they even have a better appreciation for school, the kids themselves.
You would hope.
I mean, because they, as much as they were like, oh, woohoo, we get to be off, they came back and they were like, wow, I missed you guys. This was a lot. We don't want to be online. And that's why you had a large surge of kids that next year want to come back. And really the ones that stayed home were because of medical issues with themselves or their families. And so, we've learned a lot. We really have. And one of them, you touched on it, is student mental health. There was a huge drop in mental health services during the pandemic because they couldn't go see a guidance counselor. They couldn't go see a school psychologist. Yeah, and with telehealth, you saw telehealth come about, but that's not the same for a student whose brain is developing at their age, especially for me with teenagers. So teenagers were potentially being isolated by themselves and then all of a sudden being thrown back into school, and there was a big kind of combustion of feelings for many of our students coming back. And so, now that we're, what we would call, I guess, like I said, pre-COVID times,
or normal,
normal, whatever normal is.
Yeah, there'll never be a normal, I think, nowadays.
Absolutely, but now that we're, quote unquote normal, it's like, I think there's a better appreciation from educators and from students about social and emotional learning, and ensuring our students' mental health is taken care of, ensuring that educators' mental health is taken care of, because it's just different. It's not necessarily good, it's just different. Education is different now. We're seeing a lot more achievement gaps, a lot more academic gaps in our students, because while people will think, oh, they've been normal for a year now, they should be caught back up. But caught back up to whose standards?
There's too many different types of standards out there.
Exactly.
It could be a local, a community, a state.
Right.
Or national.
Right. And you think even in the Youngstown and Mahoning Valley, you've got areas of poverty, you've got areas of wealth, and then you've got areas that are in between. And no matter which of those areas you either reside in or maybe you're a teacher in, all of those students had different needs at the time.
And you still have undereducated, or let me rephrase that, uneducated, depending on families and poverty.
Right.
In all sections.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what people don't realize. No matter where you are, there is underachieving areas that, broadband was huge.
Absolutely.
No matter where you are, you can be in the most prestigious area. There were still broadband issues.
Yeah.
There were still internet issues. Broadband, I call two different. Broadband is connecting. Internet is just crashing sites, or like you said, updating specific things. And we look at like how you guys are trying to maintain, because I've heard rumors that a lot of teachers actually went out into the community to find their students.
Yeah, absolutely. There are colleagues of mine that were dropping off packets at students' houses, especially during quarantine, because students didn't have access to internet. As I said, the world was not ready to go digital. Yeah. As much technology as we have in 2020 or had in 2020, we still weren't ready. And so I had many colleagues who were driving to their students' houses to just even say like, hey, I need you to work on these things. We need to work together. When can we meet? Here's a paper version. I'll come back and pick it up, because we couldn't have access to these students. And and there's remnants of this still today. There were some students we just weren't able to reach in 2020.
Interesting.
And so those students, unfortunately, they suffered from it academically. And we're still, like I said, we're still trying to close those gaps. And it's going to take a few more years. Things, as much as we would like to say look normal, academically are not normal. There are still things that I have to go back and review teaching freshman Algebra 1 from 8th and 7th and 6th grade, because they didn't get it because we're behind. And again, I don't like saying behind, because behind who, right? We're behind the whole world, but behind, I guess, what we would have been pre-COVID. And so, as we do get more normal, people think it's this automatic switch back to what we did before, but things are different, right? We have to take time to have conversations with our students about non-academic things that have to do with their mental health and how to treat people kindly. Students were stuck so much at home and behind a screen.
Right.
Social media use has increased even more than it was since 2020. And, our students sometimes have a lack of communication skills because of how much time they spend on screens. Exactly.
They're more of typing, like, this is what I'm going to say.
Yes.
Compared to actually just having a general conversation.
Right.
My assumption was back in the day, probably 5-10 years ago, that there was that misnomer that the people that, like, when I was, this is aging me, when I was in high school, I had a pager.
Yeah.
And when people that were in the 2010s had an iPhone or something in high school and grew up with technology of always texting.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, talking with some, that it was detrimental to them because they couldn't communicate in maybe an interview or just having a general conversation. But I think that has now changed with everything going on. But like you said, there's still that gap that we look at. And what's probably one of the biggest norms that maybe the community or parents don't know about an educator? What they see, because they only see from the outside in, unless they're talking with the teacher or getting to know what's going on in their classroom. What is the biggest thing that you probably want to communicate to those individuals or family members?
Well, and I'm not sure this is simply because of the pandemic, but I do know that a lot of educators are placing a lot of personal boundaries. A lot of people, community members, parents think that teachers are in the profession not for the money, but for the kids. 100%. You're not wrong. We're here for our students, but we also deserve to be rewarded with the correct amount of pay as our peers would in other professions. Just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean I'm not any less of a professional than an accountant or an engineer. I'm still a master of my trade in my own way. And so, because of that, I know the big TikTok thing right now is quiet quitting. Where you only work your contracted hours and that's it.
TikTok, I'm not even on TikTok, so I don't.
And you know what? I just learned about it the other day, so you're okay. I'm not a big TikTok person.
Instagram was enough for me.
Yes, I like the Instagram. So, but it's really just about placing personal boundaries. My work hours are 7:15 to 2:45. I can't answer emails after 3:00. I got a 2-year-old running around saying "mommy" all night. There's no way.
And in some matters, you're probably sometimes grading papers at night.
And and I personally, I've even set the boundary that I don't do that. I have a planning period. I have time in my work hours where I get paid to do that work. And so, I know we've got this quiet quitting thing going on. And do I do things before and after my contract hours? I do, to a certain extent. But it's really important for community members and parents and those outside of the classroom or the offices and the buildings and the buses to really see that just because we're trying to set personal boundaries for ourselves does not mean that I'm any less passionate about teaching their student. That is why I'm here. I'm passionate because I want to make a great impact on students academically and increase their success in mathematics. That's why I'm here, because I'm passionate about that. But that doesn't mean that I have to work 5 extra hours afterwards and not get some sort of stipend for it. And so I know that's not an expectation in the Austintown Local School District, but that is an expectation in other school districts around the state of Ohio. And teachers are getting not necessarily punished, but somewhat of a target on their back because they're not going above and beyond, because people will see that as, they're not dedicated enough. And that's not the case, and so those boundaries are there, and we work to advocate for our students and for ourselves and as our colleagues, so that we deserve to get paid for the work that we do all the time. So I think that's something that really has come out of the pandemic is people were willing to set those boundaries because they started spending more time with their families.
Well,
they were able to start
right.
creating that divide when they went back to work after, the quarantine was over.
Right, and I worked from home. And I felt like I worked a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
It's hard to do, though.
It is, and I respect educators and everything. And we look at that as we mentioned earlier about people that have quit the profession, left retirement, so in that first 5 years. But we also look at that we're almost a month, 3, 4, 5 weeks into the school period, and there still are hundreds of thousands of jobs, teachers, bus drivers, staff for the school districts. And they're just, it's becoming, and people don't understand, like, they may be doing something that they probably haven't done. And we look at that, how do we continue to keep educators, number one, and recruit in that kind of work-related force? Because you look at it as people either leave the profession for a variety of things. It could be from want to just get out of the profession in general, a better job, different branch, more pay, better work balance. Right. It could be 100 different things. So in your opinion, how do you balance that to try to recruit these educators? Because I have seen school districts provide a lot of different incentives to get these teachers, a signing bonus, help you move. What's that look like in your eyes? Because you've seen a variety of different things. What's that look like?
Yeah, so, recruitment and retention are probably one of the biggest things, because as you stated those numbers earlier, I've heard those numbers, but it hits me very real every time, and so you see good educators leaving the profession, but there's also not a lot of young people passionate about education. And in my opinion, because they hear what the current teachers are going through. If I was a young person who had no idea what I wanted to do, I probably wouldn't pick education either. Because you hear people talk about it and you hear all these negative things. And of course, in the media and everywhere, you're going to hear the negative things. You're not going to hear all the positive things.
Yeah, and that's why we pride on that. We pride on the story of the individual and what's going on in the general basis. And we want people to understand, like, there are good things that no matter what profession it is, but you know how it is. There's always a handful of bad apples within every group. Yeah. Are you going to have the best of this, the best of this?
Yeah. And that's, and that's the thing. People are there bad teachers somewhere? I'm sure there are, like you said, there's a handful of bad apples in every profession, in every company. It just is what it is, but I know in Austintown we have phenomenal educators, and we still don't have people coming into the profession. I know YSU's College of Education enrollments have declined. It's over the past, I don't know how many years since I've graduated.
Last 10, 15 years. That used to be one of the main, at Youngstown State, it used to be one of the main feeders. They used to have hundreds.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's down.
Yeah, and it's hard because educators are so overwhelmed that they have a hard time taking on student teachers. So then you can't have anywhere for these pre-service teachers to go. So, when you get these young people who are like, well, nobody even wants to help me be a student teacher, well, then why would they continue their work in the profession? And so until there is some sort of cultural norm that respects educators as the professionals that they are, not just monetarily and financially, but by respecting our opinions as professionals, knowing that we are the ones on the front lines, we're the ones to make the best decisions for our students, and allowing us to make those decisions on what we teach, how we teach, when we teach, how to assess our students. High stakes testing is huge, and it hurts our students. So until we get the respect that people trust our opinion as professionals to do what's best for our students, because we have the background in the education, we're not going to get a ton of people coming into the profession. Because who wants to go into a profession where you're not respected as just even a human being? There are, places that we can't even bargain fair contracts. And we have the right to bargain in the state of Ohio. And there are, some local school administrations that are unwilling to bargain fair contracts for their educators. And without a fair contract, that's your educator's working environment is a student's learning environment, and so we're not going to get people in the profession. And so we start respecting educators for everything that they are, physically, emotionally, monetarily, all of that. And it really comes down to that, in my opinion.
And we look at that the pandemic has also opened up a lot of disparities.
Absolutely.
From what little resources the schools had compared to what they need for moving forward.
Yeah.
And we look at it as there used to be that we knew of this issue, but then when the pandemic hit, the issue just became explosive.
Absolutely.
And each district's different.
Yeah.
And everything like that. So we look at that, and if you could give one advice to future educators, people that maybe aren't thinking about the profession, or they're thinking about it, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would tell them to jump in and advocate for themselves and their students, because without advocacy, nothing will change. So if you're thinking about the profession, you're like, well, I don't like this about it, then change it. And that's what's so powerful for me to be a part of a union, is with that collective voice, with that collective power, we can see change. I told you earlier, OEA was absolutely crucial in getting that punitive evaluation system to a newer and better version. And we're never done, right?
Yeah,
the work of advocacy is never
going to be
done.
Perfect.
Right.
No matter who's advocating for what.
Exactly.
It's never going to be perfect.
Exactly.
You're always going to get some different opinions on this is how it should be, this is how we should be, stuff like that.
And that's the thing. I can respect diverse opinions. It has to be what's best for our students, though. And so that's what I would tell anybody that's wavering on the decision to become an educator or not, is to really just jump in and advocate for the things you want to see changed, and work your butt off on the things that you're really good at. And find the support. It's okay to not know what you're doing your first year, because as though you student teach and you do your preclinicals and your service hours and all that stuff, it's not the same when you're thrown in there by yourself. It's really not, especially if you're in a different district than what you student taught in. You're not used to it, and you're not sure what the expectations are. And education has changed every year, and because of COVID, but also not because of COVID. It's always changing and evolving. And so it's really something that we just gotta work towards and work for, and realize that if you don't have a passion for bettering the lives of students, education as a career is not for you.
Might not be your. Might not be
and that's okay to
right.
admit. But I teach seniors as well, and I tell them, I said, I don't care what you do after high school. You don't have to go to college if you don't want to. You don't have to go to trade school if you don't want to. You can go in the military. You can just get a job. I just want you to be successful and be happy in doing what you're doing.
It's the norm that would you rather get paid $5 million for a job that you hate, or get paid $100,000 to a job you love?
Right.
I forget who always says the quote, and I've gotten multiple answers on this, that if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And I've heard different people say that. I don't stand by that. I mean, I enjoy a lot what I do, but if I'm happy, I'm doing good. Right. It doesn't matter what I'm getting paid.
Yeah. Well, and you tell a 17-year-old teenager that, they may not agree with you. They're probably going to go with the $5 million.
Yeah, they're going to take, but after a month, well, here's the thing. I'll take the job for a month, take that, divide $5 million by 12, take that for the first year, and then go to the $100,000. And then take the money, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you coming on and just getting some information and just having a good conversation. Yeah. And I hope you've learned a lot as what I have, and just if someone wanted to find more information about education, would you be able to help them?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how would they find you? Like what would like Austintown Fitch's website, or tell us if they'd like to find out.
Yeah, so I mean, my staff bio is on Austintown Fitch's webpage. Like I said, I'm also highly involved in the Ohio Education Association. So I'm actually a member ambassador for Ohio's new educators. So they can go to ohea.org/one, and they could find my information there as well. And yeah, I'd be happy to talk to anybody, you know, and spreading awareness about, you know, what's really going on in our schools today is another passion of mine besides just making students better.
I appreciate it.
So,
thank you for coming on, and appreciate your time. I know you're a busy educator.
Yeah,
especially 3-4 weeks in. So
it's only going to get busier.
Yeah, especially when the fall comes around.
Oh yeah.
At the end of each show, I like to work with my guests and just have some fun.
Okay.
So I have some rapid questions.
All right. I'll do my best.
Yeah, the answer can be personal or professional. It's totally up to you. There's, in my opinion, there's no right or wrong answer.
All right.
Here we go.
I'm ready.
Best accomplishment.
Making it this far. Not quitting my first year and actually being willing to accept help.
Okay. Best memory.
Having my daughter. She is the light of my life, and my husband and I are so grateful to have her.
It's
awesome
1 year
memories.
for me.
Yeah.
She wakes up, she smacks you, wake up, and she smiles. I'm mad at you. Best experience.
So educationally, it truly is, and this might sound super cliche, but cliches are the way they are because they're true. When those students have those light bulb moments or realize, hey, I'm actually not bad at math, I just needed to look at it a different way. I've had a few of those that are really, really big over the past 6 years, and it has been awesome to see kids progress from, I hate math, I can't do this, there's no way I'm going to pass, to, oh my gosh, I just got a C in math class when they thought they were going to get an F. So those are awesome to see.
Who's your role model?
My grandma. Okay. She passed back in 2010.
Okay.
And she just lived life. You know,
How old was
she raised kids. She was in her late 70s at the time.
Yeah, by then,
maybe
with
early
their grandkids,
80s.
they're spoiling them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we were all spoiled. But she was wonderful, you know, and she worked so hard. You know, that typical Youngstown grind. She was a seamstress, you know, she did all these things. Yeah, and it was nice to hear her stories when I was a young kid about, you know, the area and those kinds of things. We used to play Scrabble all the time.
Oh, boy.
We were playing that game Mad Gab where it's all jumbled words and you have to figure out what someone's trying to say. And she's like, oh yeah, they're saying it. And we're like, no, we're not. I have no idea what I'm saying.
Grandma,
no. Yeah, but she was an inspiration, and so I miss her dearly.
Okay. Last question. If there was one person you'd want to meet, past or present, who would it be and why?
Wow. I haven't thought about that one in a long time. Like
I said, it could be anyone you want. Or a couple people.
Yeah. I really don't know. That's a hard one. I'm not a very decisive person, so when I haven't thought about something in a while, it might take me
you got about 10 seconds.
You got about 10 seconds. All right. I will say Oprah is a phenomenon in my opinion, so I think it'd be awesome to sit down and have a conversation with her. Or Brene Brown. Her leadership information is amazing. Her books are great, and so I would love to sit down and have a conversation with either of them.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight on Spanning the Need. You can check us out for more shows, podcasts, and events at spanningtheneed.com. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Good night, everyone.